Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. Let's see. We are here. Today's the release day of my third book, which is called Open Books, Closed Sets. Woo! I'll tell you a little bit about it in a moment. I know there are a couple of you here who may not be familiar with my first couple books. I will do a very, very brief, high-level overview of those to kind of bring you up to speed. The books are a series, although you can read any one of them as a standalone, and that's okay. But I like to say for maximum enjoyment, you should read the whole series, of course. And that's I sell the books. No, so in the first book, maybe next year, this starts with two fellows who were juniors in high school, Brian and Chris. And they're in band, they're on the track team, they're best friends. And near the end of their junior year, it kind of becomes obvious that maybe there's a little more going on than just best friends. And so, of course, they figure that out about themselves and each other. The only problem is that one of them, Brian, his father happens to be the pastor of the largest right-wing Christian megachurch in Kansas. And so what could possibly go wrong, you know? So, of course, when the parents find out that Brian is gay, it does not go over well. This story takes place in the mid-2000s when there's still a very active movement for, ex-gay therapy and gay conversion therapy, and they try to send him to all that. And ultimately, he leaves home. And that takes us to the second book. He finds himself in Los Angeles right before the start of his senior year in high school. He has savings from a couple years worth of summer jobs and work he did at his church, but otherwise he arrives in LA by himself, knowing no one, no place to live, anything else. And through a stroke of good luck, he ends up finding a room to rent in a home a few blocks from UCLA, owned by a gay attorney who rents 4 bedrooms of his home out to gay college students. And these people become his new family. And so he adjusts, as it says, he becomes an instant adult. He adjusts to living on his own, dealing with high school as a gay kid, and several adventures in here. The new book picks up, and he changes his name from Brian Bauer to Ryan Robertson.
Thank you.
Partly so that his, to avoid having his parents find him and the police find him and all that. But anyway, this brings us to the current book. This book covers his 4 years at UCLA. And one thing you may know, and this came out in the second book here, here's a kid, he's on his own. How in the world is a kid who's out on his own going to afford to live, to pay rent, to buy food, stuff like that, as well as to pay for a college education at UCLA? So he starts by getting a grocery store job, and obviously a $10 an hour job is not going to go very far when it comes to paying for college. So he ends up working in the adult entertainment industry. Now, I heard a term the other day that really amused me. This is a more politically correct, positively spun, nuanced term for somebody who engages in this type of work. So, no, Ryan is not a porn star. He is an adult content creator. Is that a job title for the current age or what? But at any rate, so that's what he's doing to make money and to support himself as he goes through college. And as he learns, I mean, he just wants to go to college and make friends and have fun and get a good education and have the college experience. And what he finds out is, as soon as people find out what his occupation is, they have either of two reactions. It's like, you do what? You know, what kind of person does that, you know? Or it's, oh, you're a porn star. You know, so, and neither of those are very desirable things. So this book basically deals with Ryan in his college years. Now, one thing I'll tell you about this book, most books and most movies as well are written on a story arc. And that is, at the beginning of the book, the characters get introduced, you get to learn who they are and what their life is like and all that. And then at a point, at about a third of the way in, something happens to upset their apple cart. You know, something changes their world, something disrupts everything they know, and conflict gets set in motion. And then throughout the remainder, the majority of the book, the action happens. You know, people deal with their changing circumstances, there's more conflicts, and then finally it works its way up to a climax where the main character has to summon, you know, new courage within them, or they have to rise to the occasion, defeat whoever the dragon is or whatever. You know, they save the day, and then for the rest of the story, it ties up all the loose ends, and everyone lives happily ever after. This book doesn't quite follow that pattern. And part of it is because this is the third book in a series of 6. So I like to think of this book instead as a series of vignettes or a series of short stories. It is several chapters of Ryan's 4-year period while he's at UCLA. The first part is his first semester as a freshman. And in the second book, Instant Adult, he had a nemesis in high school who did some fairly nasty things to him named Jordan Harrington. Guess who he runs into in one of his classes on the first day of school? Jordan Harrington. And Jordan has decided to try to become a better person, and he really wants to make up with Ryan for how badly he treated him, and really wants to try and be a friend. And so they kind of work through some of that stuff and end up being friends. Also in this book, he and his original best friend / boyfriend from high school, Chris, reconnect. Now they don't get back together. Chris is going to school at University of Maryland, and he has a boyfriend and all that. But they get back in touch, they reestablish contact with each other. There's other things that happen throughout Ryan's college years. He has a dating experience that ends up being educational. Another thing with this book is you get to learn a little bit more about the lives of some of the other people in his house, particularly the guy who owns the house, Hal. And Hal sort of becomes Ryan's new father figure. He is his mentor, his role model. He provides guidance and all that. There's a section of the book that deals with Hal. To give you a little highlight, first of all, Hal goes to a men's retreat weekend. That's pretty wild and crazy and wacky. But one of the nice things from that is he meets someone. So Hal gets a boyfriend. So that's really nice. And Hal also decides, and Hal has been for many years an attorney in the adult entertainment industry. He decides he is going to strike out on his own and start his own production company. So those are some of the episodes in these sagas in here. The other thing that I won't give you too much of a spoiler, but there is a tragedy in this book, and Ryan has to learn how to deal with tragedy. And so Even though there isn't really a story arc in a traditional sense, you can still see that the Ryan who starts school as a freshman and the Ryan who graduates school as a senior is very much a more mature, more developed, much more changed person. So I think there are a lot of, cool like vignettes and short stories and subplots and everything in here that you're going to enjoy. So let me read a little bit of the book to you. This was kind of a chapter I put in kind of for humorous relief. It does further the plot a little bit, but there's a little bit of WTF type humor in it, like, could this really happen? But this happens in about a week before Christmas in 2010, which would be Ryan's junior year. And this is right about the time Hal, the guy who owns the house, is starting his production company. So here we go. So Hal received an invitation to a holiday party hosted by an old friend named Charlie Kressler. He asked Charlie if he could extend the invitation to Brent, that's his new boyfriend, and a couple of the guys in the house, and Charlie was happy to oblige. Charlie lived with his partner of 18 years, Stuart, in a fashionable home in the Silver Lake neighborhood of Los Angeles. As Hal drove the 45-minute drive to Charlie and Stuart's house, Ryan asked, "So how do you know this guy?" Hal said, "We met back in the 80s. He was in the business too. He and I did a few scenes together. We've stayed in touch off and on over the years." Ricky asked, "What was his porn name?" Hal replied, "Woody Long." Yeah, I know. Everybody groaned in unison. It was accurate, though. Ricky said, "Woody Long? Are you kidding me? Oh man, that dude was legendary. I've seen a couple of his videos." Yeah, he was quite a big star back in those days, and I do mean big. No shit. Ricky thought for a second. So do you know if he and his partner are open? Ryan said, "Jesus, dude, you are the biggest size queen." And Hal said, "I don't know, you might want to wait until you meet him. I mean, he's a great guy and everything, but let's just say the years haven't been kind to him." Ricky said, "As long as his dick hasn't shrunk." Brent said, "Moving on. What's he doing now?" "He's an interior designer, and it's designer, not decorator, just so you don't commit that faux pas. When he was phasing out of being a performer, he did set design for Eagle Studios for a while. Now he designs interiors for wealthy people's homes. I understand he's developed quite a clientele." Ryan asked, "What does Stuart do?" "I believe he's an architect. He designs plans for custom homes." Brent said, "Well, that works out well. One designs the home itself, and the other designs the interior." Hal said, "I haven't been to their home for about 4 years. The last time I was there, it was pretty fabulous. Charlie told me he completely redid their interior a couple of years ago, so I can't wait to see what it looks like now." Ryan said, "You know, if he used to do set design for adult movies, maybe you could get him to design sets for some of your movies." Hal said, "Bingo." "Yes, I fully intend to mention that to him tonight. If he's interested, we'll set up a meeting soon." Brent said, "If he's gotten to the point where he's being hired by the elite, he might be too expensive for you." "Yeah, probably, but it never hurts to ask." Ricky said, Maybe I could help you negotiate lower rates. Hal sighed and said, "Down, boy." They entered the neighborhood where Charlie and Stuart lived. Narrow, curvy roads snaked around the hilly terrain. The houses were packed tightly and close to the street. There were very few options for on-street parking, but Hal found a spot that he could squeeze into just a couple doors down from Charlie and Stuart's house. As they approached the modern, stylish house, Hal turned to the others and he said, "A word of warning. Don't drink from a punch bowl or eat anything that looks homemade until you've determined what may or may not be in it. And it's okay to ask. Just say, 'Is there anything in this?' They'll know what you mean." Hal rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, Stuart answered and welcomed the four guys into his home. Stuart and Hal hugged. Stuart said, "It's so nice to see you again. You're looking great." Hal said, "Thanks, you too, and thank you for inviting us. Guys, this is Stuart. Stuart, this is my boyfriend Brent, and these are two of my housemates, Ricky and Ryan." Everyone shook hands. A small white dog ran up to Stuart and barked at the strangers invading his home. He was a Pomeranian with long, straight hair that was as pure white as the driven snow. He looked like a small white poof ball with eyes. Stuart scooped the dog up into his arms. "And this is Fuckles." It's spelled Phuqueles. Hal, Brent, Ricky, and Ryan were speechless. Stuart rolled his eyes. "I know. Charlie insisted on naming him that. Don't worry, he'll calm down after 30 seconds. Stuart led them down a short hall toward the main living area. Hal, Brent, Ryan, and Ricky couldn't wait to see how fabulous a home decorated by one of Beverly Hills' most celebrated interior designers would be. When they arrived at the great room, they were aghast. Every inch of surface area was black. Black walls, black ceiling, black carpet, black curtains, and black furniture. Hal looked up to the top of the wall along the back of the house. On previous visits, there had been a row of small square windows near the ceiling to let in the natural light. They were blocked with precisely cut wood squares that were painted black. In contrast to the completely black surroundings, a tall white artificial Christmas tree stood near one corner. It was adorned with strings of twinkling white LED lights, silvery ornaments, and white ribbon garlands. All the presents under the tree were wrapped in white paper, ribbons, and bows. Hanging above the tree was a small, slowly rotating disco ball, illuminated by a spotlight mounted on the ceiling. Around the walls, a few modern paintings featuring geometric designs and bold colors were mounted within garish, oversized gold frames. Each piece was illuminated by a strategically placed spotlight on the ceiling. Fuckles was no longer concerned with the new humans in his home, so Stuart lowered him to the floor. He scampered toward the kitchen in search of accidentally dropped food items. Stuart said, "There are all sorts of goodies in the kitchen. Help yourself." He excused himself and headed back to the kitchen. Ryan whispered, "I'm surprised they don't have a black dog. If Fuckles sheds, there would be white dog hair all over the place." Brent whispered back, "You'd never see him. They would constantly be tripping on him or sitting on him." 8 guests had already arrived. Some were mingling in the kitchen near the food, and a few were standing in a cluster near the Christmas tree, talking. As Ryan, Ricky, Hal, and Brent scanned the group standing near the tree, they noticed a slender, almost anorexic-looking man who appeared to be the center of conversation. He wore a loose-fitting striped shirt that was unbuttoned to his navel, revealing a dense forest of salt and pepper chest hair. He was holding a pink martini in one hand. His other hand, palm up, held a cigarette casually dangling from his fingers, which never strayed more than a few inches from his head. Between sentences, he alternated sips on his martini and drags on his cigarette. His longish hair was streaked with blonde and light brown highlights in an attempt to cover the gray hairs that were slowly overtaking his head. His coif was held firmly in place with a generous layer of product. Ricky whispered into Ryan's ear, "If that cigarette gets any closer to his hair, it will start a fire." Brent heard that and chuckled. Hal shot Ricky a stern glance. One of the other guests shifted her position slightly, and this man's most striking feature came into view. His skin-tight jeans and apparent lack of underwear accentuated a massive mound that ran from his crotch down one pant leg halfway to his knee. It was so prominently featured that no one who glanced in its general direction could avoid noticing it. Ryan was taken aback. He always wore underwear and loose-fitting pants to avoid calling attention to his endowment. He glanced at Ricky. Ricky's eyes were wide open, and for the first time Ryan could remember, he was speechless. Hal led Brent, Ricky, and Ryan toward the small group. When Charlie saw Hal, he said to the others, "Will you excuse me for a moment?" Then he took a few steps forward to greet Hal. "Darling, so great to see you. You look fabulous." Once they were within a few inches of each other, Charlie said, "Moi, moi," to each side of Hal's face. Hal said, "Charlie, I'd like you to meet my boyfriend, Brent." Charlie transferred his cigarette to between the third finger and pinky of his martini hand, then shook Brent's hand. "Delighted, and congratulations on finally getting this one to settle down." Brent said, "I am the lucky one." Hal said, "And these are two of the guys who live in my house now, Ricky and Ryan." Charlie shook both of their hands and gave them a look that indicated he recognized them from their videos. Ryan said, "This is quite a place you have here. I've never seen anything quite like it." Charlie took that as a compliment. "Thank you. I chose this theme to honor and celebrate our first Black president, Barack Obama." Brent and Ryan caught each other's eye. It was all they could do to not crack up. Charlie took a sip of his martini and said, "After everyone has arrived and things settle down a bit, I'll take you on a tour. In the meantime, help yourselves in the kitchen." He turned and went back to the group he had been chatting with. The four guys headed to the kitchen. Ryan said, just loud enough for the four of them to hear, "I wonder if we'll need flashlights for the tour." Brent said, "I wonder if their bedroom is completely black." Ricky said, "I certainly intend to find out." Hal shook his head. "Behave yourselves. Geez, I can't take you anywhere."